people who do not know anything about this whole area, they sooner or later ask, are you on anything now? They think that we go around on psychedelic drugs
Turn
all the
on
time.
all the time.
Mushrooms, psilocybin.
I hold 2CB as being a very
2CB.
very excellent psychedelic.
Mescaline.
Mescaline. I don't like drugs that get too sparkly, like the MDA world.
Yeah, I don't like stoning drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like being stoned. It's, you don't learn anything.
I don't like drugs that inhibit communication.
Like, for instance, what?
2CE. I mean, MDE.
Oh, okay, I agree with you, yeah. I could do without MDE. 2CI is good.
2CI is very good. The sexual aspects are always very positive contributors
If
to
we
liking.
can't make love on a drug, then there's something not quite right.
How do you define consciousness, and how much of it is determined by chemistry?
Well, that's an odd question. I consider consciousness where you are if you're alive. And a lot of people put it as a brain function. I consider consciousness as a mental function.
He's outside the mainstream. I mean, he is kind of a rogue.
Oh, that's not ready to work up yet.
Well, Sasha's passionately committed to understanding how these drugs work and their structure activity. He's mainly a chemist.
I know I tried running a reaction with quite a bit of heat in a matter of an hour or two, and almost no reaction at all. So I put it over a magnetic stirrer that throws off a small amount of heat, and it's just slightly warm, maybe 30 degrees. And it's been that now for a couple of months.
And so his real fascination again is to make chemicals with very small differences, and to test what those differences are, and he's been willing to test them on himself for the longest time period. He's been the principal subject.
And all this mess around here, except those things that drop down thanks to squirrels and other rodents and birds. Birds come down the fireplace periodically.
His fundamental driving force is to understand how these compounds work and what their differences are, rather than just to get loaded.
I mean, we have receptors for psychedelic drugs. We do not have natural psychedelic drugs inside of us. Why do we have the receptors and not the drugs? Well, perhaps at one time we had the drugs. As part of a metabolic process, we generated the drugs that made the psychedelic state a natural state. And these people then would, I can see the potential of looking at the tooth of a saber-toothed tiger and saying, oh, look at the pretty designs on this tooth. And as a consequence of dropping your defenses against an enemy, be removed from the gene pool. So perhaps those people who did turn on because of endogenous psychedelics were removed from the gene pool, and therefore they're no longer there. The drugs are not made in the body, but the receptors are still there. Because the receptors were not the hazard, it was the drug that was generated that was the hazard to survival. And so that is maybe why some of these plants with their psychedelic components turn you on, because the receptors are intact from generations. But the natural psychedelic metabolite in the body no longer exists. Is it a path you should avoid or a path you should go down? I don't know how you can answer the question until you start down the path. I really don't.
When I was in high school, my father was never speaking on the telephone. He wanted to be in person, in private. He always thought the phones might be tapped. And I never questioned that they might be tapped. It's just that I couldn't think of why they were wishing to persecute my father.
fire in here. We got ethyl ether in here.
Oh,
everyone out of here.
Off,
You
off
too.
the path. Mr. Cameraman?
This is a safety issue.
Down
You can
the
take
path.
your pictures, but
Come
you're
with
going to
us.
do it out of the area.
The trouble started only when the first book had been published. They said, holy mackerel, or something to that effect. This guy has a DEA license. Sasha was on very good terms with a lot of the chemists in the DEA, because chemists love chemistry. And here was this maverick chemist. He had a DEA license to do lab work, and you know, this is a respectable man and a respectable scientist. So you don't just barge in.
Did my wife invite you?
We were here for the call. We'll
Let's
discuss all that
move out
later.
of here.
We're going to walk up the road to the
If you try to resist it, the lawful detention will be an arrest.
One of them asked, "You don't by any chance have any peyote here, do you?" We said, "Yeah, right there next to your feet." And they just jumped. Suddenly you realize that these people were really scared of these things. It's just a little damn cactus.
All we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out what you're doing there, and if what you're doing is legal. That is it.
They didn't understand psychedelics. They had the image of somebody out of control, somebody who didn't belong in decent society.
You guys are trying to meet on with us? No, we find them.
It was my first experience with mescaline, which is a psychoactive drug that's found in the peyote cactus and in many other cacti. And I had an experience with it, gosh, what was that, 45, 50 years ago. I saw colors that I was totally unfamiliar with. A flower had a color that I couldn't even give a name to. I had to recall memories of childhood. I was seeing with articulate clarity. And then I thought, why would 400 milligrams of a white crystal have all of this in it? What it's doing is allowing me to communicate with parts of me that I had not communicated with for a long time.
This is something from NIDA. Maybe it's something about money. That's what I need. I need good news about money. Oh, I know what this is. Yeah. This is a dopamine D3 antagonist that we're using to figure out what LSD is doing in the brain. I'll open this one. My hands are stronger.
I'm working in the system, doing it the way they say you have to do it.
You know, we have all kinds of OSHA rules and EPA rules, and all the radioisotopes have to be taken care of.
And that's always, you know, been my shtick, is if you want to make change happen, you know, work inside the system. Have you seen Sasha's lab?
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, what more can I say?
There's probably not that many labs in the United States where PCAL is a desk reference. And usually, and probably not where it's a desk reference where the spine is broken from being opened up so much.
You're making a material that's never been looked at before. No one's ever made it. And so you wonder, is it a psychedelic? You don't know. You can't go to the literature because it's not in the literature. It's a brand new thing. It meets you and you meet it. You begin learning from it and it learns from you. You can find the basic emotions in animals, but you don't find the subtleties of the mental process. And that's why you must use human subjects and why you must be careful, because sometimes you bend something and it doesn't unbend. What happens is it's like hair on your neck stands up a little bit. Ooh, something's going on. There's that little aura of beginning effect. Once I have found what I believe is the active level, then Anne joins me in an experiment to confirm that it's not me that's strange, but it's the compound. It has the same action on both of us to some extent. And once that has been confirmed, then our research group will meet with the compound, about maybe 8 or maybe 10 people, and we'll share the compound all around. He is a little bit more sensitive, so often he'll take a little bit less. He's a little bit refractory, maybe a little bit more. And we'll get a feel of the whole group, and the group all confirms the activity. You've answered the question. What you have is part of the self-preservation is to ignore 95% of the stuff that's out there. You have a person who's observing everything and remembers everything. He can't cross the street because he's fascinated by the green lights, by the cars, by the gravel, by the flies that are over there on the thing, by the fact that the car has a little blinker going. And if he pays attention to everything he saw, he'd be a life's risk to go across a crosswalk, crossing a street. So he learned to turn that off, turn that off, turn that. Watch for the green light, watch where the first foot goes down there, glance right and left, there's no car coming, and you get across the street safely. You have to ignore 99% of what's around you to be safe, to achieve where you want to achieve. What these things catalyze, letting you get access to those things you've been ignoring or have been denying. So you think you know how the mind works. There's a lot to be found. And you have to find out by influencing, changing, disturbing. I love the use of radioactive materials because you can scan yourself and find out where it goes in the brain. And that is where's the mind? Where would you say the mind is? In the brain? In the spirit? In the gallbladder? Where's the mind in the body? When all these things, oh, mind, you mean the brain? No, the mind. I mean, where's the soul? Is it in you or around you? Where's it located? What does it look like? Is it rectangular? Is it round? Between mind and brain, when you die, the brain becomes non-functional. Do you believe that the mind may still be functional in the absence of a brain? Do you think the soul might be functional in the absence of a brain? I remember one time I was on an experiment. I forget the chemical, it doesn't matter. But as I was, in fact, you were with me. We were together. And I was looking at the clock because it was interesting to see the second hand of the clock going around. And as I was watching the second hand of the clock, it was going slower and slower and slower. And we decided how much slower could you get it to go. So we watched the second hand, and we worked together, and we got the second hand to where it very, very slowly moving. And another second occurred, is now within 6 seconds of being at the bottom of down number 6 down there. And then a little while later, sometime later, another second occurred, but each one is taking longer than the previous second. And it occurred to me, if the clock were to stop, what defines death? And suddenly I realized I had taken a chemical that was causing the clock to slow down continuously. And we both snapped around out of it, and the clock went normally again.
No, he chickened out.
If you are approaching death in an asymptotic way, where you're getting closer and closer and closer to time, and you never touch that baseline, you're eternal. Your life is eternal. You're just going at a slower pace.
Any child with any amount of intelligence is going to be curious and want to find out what it is that the grown-ups are saying no to.
And the children they see themselves as eternal.
Yeah.
They will never die because they are young. The whole life ahead of them goes on forever. It's only when you get up into the 30s you begin realizing maybe it is not eternal. Ooh, yeah. To give the relative potency of something. There is one unusual category that I have only used twice or 3 times in my life of 4 pluses. Anything and everything that occurs is at your command. You can look at a cat up on the hill, and the cat looks at me, and I smile at the cat, and the cat runs away. You are controlling that cat. You have control over everything around. Total control of my environment. Total bliss. And it occurred to me after about half an hour of this extraordinary state, what if this thing were not reversible? Could one stay in a state of bliss for the rest of his life? It's really a scary thought, to be able to control everything totally. And I was very happy when it began drifting away and went back to just a plain +3, a super stoned state. But these little things can occur, something of that ilk, that are disturbing because you suddenly realize they may not be reversible. Perhaps you have instituted a change in your mindset or your sensory integrity that is not reversible. This is quite scary. And this has happened a couple of times.
Do you know who hit these kids?
No, I do not. But I'm guessing it's Sasha.
Who's Sasha?
Well, you just go ask him. The guy with the white hair, beard.
The mind is, I think, allows you a border touching of the consciousness. Of, how far out from you is the outer universe? Where does your consciousness extend to? Where does how do we communicate? By word, by motion, by action. These are things that are thought out processes. This is the brain function, the talking, all the operation of the brain. But the concept of an idea, the expression of an emotion, empathy. Where does the concept of empathy originate?
I don't think anyone knows exactly what's meant by the term empathy in terms of actual biological relationships with others.
I found this egg and look what is in it.
Let me see.
One theory is that, like, when you have kids, one of the reasons you bond with your children, because, you know, children are completely parasitic.
Dad.
Oops, sorry.
You know, they eat your food, they sleep in your house, you know, I mean, there's no rational reason. I got two wonderful kids. There's no rational reason why anyone would want children, right? I mean, you know, but once you have them, you give them anything, right? You know, so that's total empathic bonding.
There are many who are doing what I did in the 50s and 60s today.
And I have a question here.
They have their little laboratories, but in the commentary of all the recipes, I left a lot of clues, little clues, ideas. People are picking up on them, and they're pursuing them, and that's exactly what I wanted.
Are you surprised your work would have such creative influence? He's an artist.
I want this to be an encouragement with ideas. I've got a lot more ideas than I have time or energy to exploit.
I'll probably keep this till next week.
Very good, no problem.
There are a lot of people working around the edge of the law.
You had figured out this formula for solving the Rubik's Cube. I said, we used to get together once or maybe twice a year at a meeting or something. It's always fun. It's nice to, when you can talk to somebody who sort of understands your language, you know, what you're talking about. Sasha's basically retired. He's trying to write up his final book.
I take the printout. I can't even read that anymore now.
Oh, that's terrible.
You know, secretly, down secretly, I wish there were a drug we could find that someone could take it and they could go, do you realize how fucked up you are in your thinking? You know, do you realize what you've done? You know, what we as the most advanced civilization in the world, what have we done? We landed on a moon, but other than that, and we have the best weapons, we have the best, you know, stealth missiles, the best stealth bombers, the best machine guns, the best laser-guided missiles. I mean, is that something to be proud of? You know, I don't think so.
That's like totally an amazing sight. His handwritten, drawn molecules on bottles and stuff like that. It's way cool. I think it's just art. He does it so beautifully. His notebooks are filled with these. He calls them dirty pictures.
And when you consider that each one of those is probably weeks to months of work, I mean, in the some hundreds of compounds that he's synthesized and tested. When I first started doing serious work here, you know, Sasha hadn't been working. It had been invaded by local critters. But his vision and his intuition are still very lively. I'm sure I could not keep up with all the things that he would like to make, but I'm gradually getting a little better, and there's a long way to go.
I did not have a goal. I still don't have a goal. What I'm looking for is learning from the process. What's the goal of I can't think of a good analogy. Anne.
It's like an explorer, you know, where there's a hill in front of him that he's never seen before.
A hallway filled with closed doors. Go through them and you find another hallway with more doors. It's an absolutely marvelous continuous process of discovery. maybe the mind does continue and the soul does continue when we, the observers of the normal clock, see the brain stops. I don't know.